Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Favorite Albums Through the Decades, the show that we're doing fairly often throughout the month of May, where we're going to take a look at bands who either were or have been around for a long time and have album releases in multiple decades, 2 or more. So we're looking at bands who have been around. Probably we're looking at 3 decades and more, right? Thereabouts. And each day we're going to pick one band, and I'm going to pick my favorite album release from each of those decades that they appeared in, and I want everybody to do the same down in the comments below. So today we're going to take a look at British hard rock legends UFO, who obviously have been around since the early 70s. They got lots of albums. I've gone through all the decades that they released albums in, and I've picked out my 5 favorites. So let's take a look at them, shall we, right? So we're going to start from the 70s first. And a lot of good ones to choose from. A lot of good ones to choose from here. But, ultimately it always comes down to my favorite. This is also my favorite UFO studio album. I'm going to go with Obsession from 1978. That crazy, bizarre Hypnosis album cover. Of course, this is the last studio album in the 70s with Mr. Michael Schenker. There's the guys in the band before he would leave to form the Michael Schenker Group. Great album, great songs. Only You Can Rock Me, Pack It Up and Go, Ain't No Baby, Looking Out for Number One, Hot and Ready, You Don't Fool Me, One More for the Rodeo. Great songs on there. Born to Lose. Love it. Still a favorite of mine. All right, let's move to the 80s. So again, here you have transition period and period. So you're transitioning from the Michael Schenker era to the Paul Chapman era. Okay, Paul, of course, Mr. Tonka, may he rest in peace, who contributed some fine guitar playing to a lot of those 80s albums. And then we'd have some further upheaval later in the decade, but solid chunk of albums in the beginning and mid-80s. With Paul on guitars. Ultimately, I think I always come back to The Wild, the Willing, and the Innocent, which was released in 1981. Pretty solid record, pretty rockin' record. I don't think any of the Chapman era albums are quite as heavy as the 70s albums, but there are lots of moments where it is, and I think this one is perhaps their heaviest one out of this decade. Change is great. Long Gone is killer. Title track is great. It's Killing Me. Great melody, great hook. Making Moves, big thumping heavy track, like that quite a bit. Couldn't Get It Right, Lonely Heart, and Profession of Violence. Good production on here. Good songs. It's long been documented that. Phil Mogg, big fan of Bruce Springsteen, so throughout the 80s he's coming across more of a kind of like Springsteen-ish way of telling stories with lyrics and the vocals. So, and nothing wrong with that. It's what he's into. But there was that flavor throughout a lot of the music of UFO through the 80s. But still, it's a really good hard rockin' record. I like that one quite a bit. Next, we're going to move into the 90s. All right, so guess who's back? Mr. Schenker is back. Here we've got a reunion of the classic lineup. Paul Raymond, Michael Schenker, Pete Way, Phil Mogg, and of course Andy Parker for 1995's Walk on Water. Unfortunately, they did a couple of re-ups with Schenker in the 90s and then again in the early 2000s. Didn't really stick. Sometimes it's like guys are just, it's just not meant to be. And as much as we would love for this lineup to stay together forever and make great music, it just wasn't meant to be. This was a tough time period in Michael Schenker's life. He was battling lots of demons and a lot of crazy stories about what went on during this time. But I think of the 3 albums that they did together later on, this is easily my favorite. Self-Made Man is really good. What it Pushed to the Limits, good rocker. Darker Days, Running on Empty, Knock Knock, Dreaming of Summer. It's good. It's not nearly as enjoyable and classic as those 70s albums, but there's some good riffing going on here. Memorable choruses. The songs rock. Schenker's playing is pretty damn good as always. So out of the 3 later albums with Schenker coming back to the band, I like this one the best. So that is going to be my pick for the 90s. Now we're going to go into the 2000s. And no, I'm not going to pick Sharks or Covenant. You know what, quite frankly, I don't find either of those albums awfully memorable. I want to love him because it's, Schenker's back in the band, but I prefer the Walk on Water album over either of those two. And they're heavy in spots, and there's some good guitar playing, but you know what it is? With this band, it's all about those memorable hooks and melodies. There's not a lot of that on those albums. I don't find a lot of the material on those two albums overly memorable, yet I really like the debut with Vinnie Moore, You Are Here. This also has Jason Bonham on drums, who had some, great drumming and some great backing vocals. I like this album. This is a really memorable album. It's I think, my favorite album of the Vinnie Moore era, the first one. When Daylight Goes to Town, great, memorable hard rock tune, right? Black Cold Coffee, bluesy, fun. The Wild One is awesome. Call Me, haunting. You got The Spark That Is Us, Mr. Freeze, big, heavy track. Jello Man, Baby Blue. A lot of memorable tracks on here. It's just a good, solid UFO record. Although, they became later on in their period, the Vinnie Moore era, more of kind of like a straight blues rock band. A lot of that kind of metallic, big 70s heavy rock stuff. Yeah, they dabbled in it, but not, this is a grown-up UFO, kind of different band. But, still really good. Really good album. I like that one a lot. That's the early part of the 2000s. Now we're going to go to the 2010s. All right, they have 3 studio albums. One of them's a covers album. The 3 studio albums post 2010 looks like that might be it for them. But my favorite of the 3 is going to be 2012's Seven Deadly. Okay, again, this is with Phil Mogg, Vinnie Moore, Andy Parker, Paul Raymond, keyboards and rhythm guitars and things. So, solid record. Mojo Town, a lot of fun. Angel Station, The Fear, Wonderland, good, big, heavy, sort of bluesy songs, right? Again, more of a blues rock record with some heft. That's kind of what I call the latter period UFO stuff. It's hefty, it's kind of heavy, but they're more blues records, like, blues rock records. This is not, the latter period UFO could not be confused with a metal band. Yeah, they're kind of a hard rock band, but the blues element is much greater, because really those like 70s albums, especially the latter 70s albums, there's not much bluesy anything going on in those albums. They're just good, really good British hard rock records with that amazing two-tonic guitar phenom known as Michael Schenker. These are different, much more mature. Still fun, though. Still fun. Phil still sounds really good on these. And, Vinny, who can do just about anything. You go see him live, he can recreate the Schenker solos on record. He does a little bit of the shred, but it's mostly more restrained, bluesy type stuff. Just a fantastic guitar player. So there you have it. So you got Seven Deadly representing the 2010s. You Are Here representing the 2000s. Walk on Water from the 90s. The Wild, the Willing, and the Innocent. No, not the Wild, the Willing, and the E Street Shuffle. This is the Wild, Willing, and the Innocent from the 80s. And Obsession for the 70s. Close call between this and Lights Out, because Lights Out is, and Force It. Those are the 3 big ones, the studio albums from the 70s that are, I'm sure we're going to get lots of people picking. So there you have it. That's my choices for favorite albums through the decades for UFO. In the comments below, let's hear your representations from all these decades that UFO released albums in. Curious to see what everybody comes up with. There's a lot to choose from, so I'm sure we'll see lots of differences in everybody's picks. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So coming up tonight, we've got In the Prague Seat with Sean Tonar, Rand Kelly, and Rick Labonte. Tonight we're going to be looking at some of our 5 favorite Canadian bands, Canadian prog bands, not named Rush. Okay, so this should be an interesting show because you got some Canadian bands that are sort of prog borderline. You got some that are firmly in that camp, right? There's a lot of very good underground prog bands throughout the decades from Canada, so it'll be interesting to see what everybody comes up with here. So stay tuned for that tonight. We've got the Monsters Den coming up on Thursday. We've got Friday morning with Martin Popoff, where we're going to be ranking our 5 favorite Little Feat albums. That's coming up Friday. All sorts of stuff happening over the weekend. We've got Bruce Dickinson ranking the solo albums. Bruce Dickinson, of course, with that band you might have heard of, Iron Maiden, right? All sorts of other stuff happening on the channel this week. We've got We did the hard rock and heavy metal mixtape challenge. That was a big success, so we're going to kind of keep going with that idea. We're going to have the classic rock mixtape challenge coming up this weekend, which should be a lot of fun. And again, we're going to have 4 panelists here putting together their mixtape and 1 judge. So that's coming up this weekend as well. And I believe that is this weekend. Yes. Oh, is that this weekend? Is that next weekend? I don't know. It's coming up real soon. I got to check the calendar. But it is coming up, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to do the same thing with prog rock, probably with fusion as well. So maybe we'll do one for extreme metal. So there's a lot of good things happening here. And, of course, also top 10 songs of Metal Church coming up this weekend with Jack Toledano and myself. So a lot happening, folks. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to make a donation to the channel, we do have our Ko-Fi link below. All your donations are greatly appreciated to help keep buying new music and getting stuff in here to review and talk about and all that good stuff. And, new equipment when we need new shirts. Well, speaking of new shirts, link to our merch page is below, where you can check out our brand new Sea of Tranquility design with the cool logo with the triangle in the back and these gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous animals, the whales swimming in the Sea of Tranquility. I love this shirt. I think this might be my favorite out of all of them, to be honest. So pick up one of those when you get a chance. We've also got Monsters Den shirts, Hudson Valley Square shirts, all sorts of different Sea of Tranquility designs, and we now also have a Comic Book Geezer shirt. So my co-host over there, Wild Bill, he has been drawing all sorts of cool little comic book things. If you've been watching the channel, you've been seeing. So he submitted a design to our T-shirt guy, and he created a Comic Book Geezer shirt out of that, The Adventures of Wood. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go over to Comic Book Geezer, check that out. Go to our merch page, check out the shirt. It's a character that Bill came up with. You'll have to see it. It's awesome. So anyway, see you all real soon. See you tonight for In the Prog Seat. Thanks for watching. I am Pete Pardo. Later.